in that bill, when we were debating in the budget, a number of alternatives to be able to say, before we spend another, whatever amount of money it was, and I'm trying to recall for a moment, but let us find the $6.5 billion in savings that we already promised. Because what's the message if we don't do that? The message is, if you don't find savings, if you don't make the system work, we're going to reward you by giving you more money, and we're going to raise taxes to pay for it. And let me suggest to you the consequences of that. When you hear that there is no resort but to raise taxes, I want you to think about a couple of things. And we were thinking about this year during the state budget that went up by 5%. Think about the fact that we could have saved money along the way as well. And this is sort of our top 10 list. And Patrick, I'm going to leave this with you. But think about the fact that we could have done these things and more, and think about what it would be worth. So one of the great problems that we've had is with the Health Connector website. Right? We are touted inside the Beltway as being the prototype for Obamacare, and yet Obamacare is undermining our ability as a state to achieve the functionality that we had before the federal law was passed. What does that mean? Well, the new website that they want to create is intended to cost somewhere between $100 and $145 million. And yet, the folks in charge of it said, we're going to go on the federal website first, and we'll use that for a while, and then we'll transition to a new state website. We asked, if the federal website is good enough for now, why do we need to spend $145 million for a new one? That's one. Number two, reforms at the Department of Transitional Assistance and EBT. Not our number, the 2013 Auditor's Report and the 2013 Inspector General Report. $25 million a year. Collecting court fees. This is something that Representative Lyons argued for strenuously in the House. We argued for it in the Senate. The fact is, a lot of folks that are determined to be somewhat indigent but not completely indigent don't pay their court fees. $34 million a year. The implementation of park testing in the Common Core. We asked, why are we so quick to abandon MCAS, which propelled us to have the highest scores in the country in math and English language learning? We actually were audacious enough in a recent debate to ask the question, how much is park going to cost if we implement it? Someone actually stood up and said, it's incalculable. I said, if it's incalculable, then why are we even moving forward with it? But we estimate conservatively that that would save somewhere between $92 and $156 million a year. The 2009 transportation reform that I mentioned earlier, $329 million a year. The very interesting buyout of toll collectors whose jobs are being eliminated, you may have seen this, but we are going to pay them $11.8 million as a retirement incentive, when the fact of the matter is their job is going away, but we're going to incent them to retire. I don't know where they'd go to work if we didn't incent them to retire, because we're going to take down toll booths. But that's a story for another day. The Boston Convention Center expansion. Volumes of information about how that is a highly speculative maneuver, and it may well not yield any benefits of the kind that were purported. It already didn't meet what it was said it was going to do originally, and there's certainly a prospect that it won't achieve the results that have been predicted in the future. $27.5 million a year. Now, we come to the last one, and it's the anti-privatization law in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Some of you know it as the Pacheco Law. And you'll know that the Pioneer Institute has done a tremendous amount of research on the Pacheco Law. We've been successful in the past at moving the threshold up a little bit, but we would suggest that if we repealed the Pacheco Law, we would save $100 million a year. Not just our number, numbers that have come from Pioneer and other places. So when you add all that up, you come up with $715 to $824 million. That's a different way of doing business. And you have to ask yourself, every time we have a debate, how much consideration is being given to savings before we move on to spending? I've given you a number of examples. I would suggest to you not enough. So here's the point. The point is, we're about to have a new administration. We're about to have a seminal election in the legislature where we have the potential to add legislators. As we stand here tonight, We have legislative candidates for 20 Senate seats. And let me suggest to you, if you elect every one of them, you will create monumental change. But if you elect one of them to add to the 4 that we have, you will have made significant change, and so on, and so on, and so on. And so here's what I think we need to do. We have to articulate a message that systemic failure of government has to change. We have to articulate a message that there are alternatives. There are other approaches. It's not just about saying, no, don't do this. It's about saying, do it right. And we have many of the answers to do it right. It's about saying that when people tell us that Republican candidates are marginal because they can't do anything when they get in office, it's about saying, what about Melissa's Law, where I was one of the lead sponsors as a Republican? What about the fact that we post roll call votes on the Senate website? We changed the rules with a Republican amendment. What about so many other instances where just 4 Republicans made a difference? Republicans in the legislature are not marginal, and we should never concede that point. Second point is this. We need to make sure that we have the resources to get folks elected. It needs to be financial, and it also needs to be in terms of people. It needs to be volunteer time. Volunteer time getting harder to get right now than finances in some respects. People are busy. It's hard to get them. When I took over the Senate PAC, I made a commitment that our Senate PAC would contribute to every single Senate candidate that ran for office. In the first election cycle that I was in charge of the PAC, it did. I made a commitment that the next election cycle, not only would we contribute to every candidate, but we would max every candidate at the $500 level. And in the last election cycle, we got everybody but one who didn't call us back. Everybody else got the maximum amount. We're working hard as a Senate Republican caucus to make sure we have the resources, to make sure we have the message, and what we need most of all now is you. You can tell that I'm actually losing my voice because I spend so much time talking about these things, and I won't stop. I won't stop because I think we owe our state, our neighbors, our future, a better system than the one we have. And the fact that you're here tonight means you care about that too. We might not even agree on everything, but what we should agree on is there's a different way to do business, and the power to make those kinds of changes is right here and all across the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. We've got to get people off the sidelines. We've got to remind them that we can make a difference. We've got to remind them that we can make change. So I'll say this before I have to go. I'll tell you that the 4 of us, from now until the end of July, are going to give you everything we've got. We're going to continue to fight the fight. We're going to continue to fight for reform. We're going to continue to make sure that you have a voice. And after that, we're going to work as hard as we can to make sure that there are more of us to return in January to take up the mantle of change. If we only had one Republican senator, we would fight the fight every day. But think about what we can do if you give us some more. We won't let you down, but we need your help. So I commit to you that we will continue to work as hard as we can, and my ask is that you continue to work with us to build the numbers and to create change and to give our state the true destiny that it deserves. I really appreciate the chance to be here tonight. Patrick, I really appreciate the chance to talk. I'm going to leave you with my top 10 list, okay. And I would say that let's talk again soon and talk about how we can change the state for the better. Thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah, no, how about we do 3 questions? How's that?
3 questions.
Go here first. I'll work this way.
You said there were 20 Senate seats, which is a lot better than actually I expected there was. So there were actually 20 Senate challenges. Can you highlight 4?
Well, I can tell you that there are a number of open seats that I think we have a very good chance in. One is Senator Feingold's seat. He's leaving to run for state treasurer.
Okay.
Alex Vispoli is the candidate there. We have the Senate president's seat. We have Representative Vinnie DiMacedo is the candidate there.
Yes.
Senator Kenderis' seat out in western Massachusetts is being vacated. Deb Goronsky is running there. She's outstanding. We have Brian Fatman, who's in a very competitive race in central Massachusetts. We also have a primary for the vacant seat of Senator Brewer, where we have 2 Republican candidates. We have Mike Valenzola, and we also have Mr. Everhart. So we have 2 there that are running for that seat. So there's some of the top ones.
And Monica Medeiros
for
running again after she ran the special election.
And Monica had a very, very good showing. I know some people involved in that. I know Patrick worked hard for her as we did. Monica's running again, and Monica certainly has a very good chance of running. And again, I don't want to slight anybody. There are a number of good candidates.
I said highlight, not. I'm not saying they're the best. Just the ones that you want to take notice of.
Yep. Okay. Question number 2.
No, that's pure. I want to get Monica in there, so.
Okay. Well, I will tell you that Monica is an outstanding candidate. I think that anybody that has heard me speak about her knows how I feel about Monica Medeiros, and she would be a wonderful addition to our caucus. All right, we've got time for one more. Brad?
What's the web address of the Senate app to support candidates?
We'll get that for you in 1 second, because I'm not remembering it, Brad. No, it's yeah, he's gonna. I get it wrong because we changed it because it was too hard to remember. Obviously, we didn't do a good enough job. But the Senate Republican PAC now has a new website that was just created. By the way, I should mention this. You can watch what we do on my blog, which is tartalk.com. You can also watch our PAC blog. I mean our caucus blog, which is scalingbeaconhill.com, and we continue to push out information from those 2 venues about what we're doing and what we think is important.
The last blog had a letter to Patrick about the immigration issue, if I recall.
So our concern about that is that there have been published reports that ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement detainees, are being brought to Massachusetts, and we've actually gotten acknowledgement of that. What we sought to find out from the regional director of ICE is how many of these folks are here, where are they being released into the public on some sort of personal recognizance, and what are the conditions of that release. He's indicated that he is going to respond to us. Secretary of Public Safety Andrea Cabral responded to a letter from House Minority Leader Brad Jones indicating, and I'll try to characterize it as best I can, that these were somewhat of routine operations and that he needn't fear. We're going to continue to ask more questions and see if we can get the answers to them. We have not yet had a response to our letter. Okay. You want to ask the last one before we go?
2.
Okay.
Has the parole board been stabilized? It's gone through some convulsions?
In my opinion, it actually has. But part of that stabilization was a result of the law that we passed, in Melissa's law, which got people with a different perspective onto the board and created procedural rules that I think made the board better.
So they're hiring and firing laws.
So I think that things have gotten better. But the probation department and the one that you're reading about in the stories that have been reported in the paper, I think has undergone some positive change. I think when the dust settles in that trial, we're going to have a lot of work more to do.
Okay, and one more. What was the acknowledged number of jobs that were created for the $55 million Keynesian expenditure?
Well, it's very interesting. There was no number affixed to that. The suggestion was there were going to be a tremendous number of jobs created, but you know, one of the things that we tried to raise during the Senate budget debate is that up until recently, it just recently changed for the first time. But if you look at the low point that we had, or the high point rather, in 2008, and you look to the present, we hadn't created one net new job. So for all the things that have been undertaken by the Patrick administration, there was no net increase in jobs. That just recently changed, and we added a few more than we had in 2008.
I find, you know, I mean, running a building where I have small businessmen who are struggling to survive and start it, and people who want to be startups and stuff, that the property taxes almost make it to the point where it's hard for me to justify continuing to run the physical structure that, you know, holds their businesses in. Getting startups to start is very difficult. It's hard for them to do it.
Again, I would argue that we've spent a lot of time pursuing boutique industries, and we haven't spent enough time thinking about the average employer that we need to keep jobs and to grow jobs. And that's what we're going to continue to talk about, not only for the next month, but for the next several years.
The market instead of the market making the jobs.
All right. I apologize. I do have to run. Thank you all very much. Thank you so much. Great to see you.